Hey, it's Rachel with Journey Back Quilts, and today we're going to journey back to the basics. Today we're going to be making Jacob's Ladder. We're going to be taking some of those basic blocks that we've been learning in the last few lessons and putting them together in this traditional block. Let's get started. So to make Jacob's Ladder, you're going to need 5 4 patches and 4 half square triangles. These are measuring 4.5 inches each. You can learn how to make 4 patches many at a time on lesson 14 in this series. And on lesson 3, you'll learn how to make 4 half square triangles at a time. So go watch those to make these blocks and then come back here and we're going to make Jacob's Ladder with them. Okay, once you've made those, we're going to lay them out like so. So it's kind of like a 9 patch where we're going to put our 4 patches going like so, and you can see the colors are running through each other, and then our whites are going to run going this way. So we've got the corners of our 9 patch and the center, and then our half square triangles are going to go in between those. So this one's going to go down towards the right, this one's going up towards the left, so it looks kind of like a bow tie here. And then we're going to do the same thing here. So this one's going down towards the right. This one's going up towards the left. And that is the shape of the Jacob's Ladder. Now all we have to do is sew it together like a 9 patch. So we're going to sew the far right to the center on all of these rows and just sew them into rows of 3. So let's go to the sewing machine and put those together. Okay, we're just going to put those right sides together, matching up those raw edges, and sew them down at a 1/4 inch seam. And I'm going to chain piece these. So I just sewed right off of my first block, keeping the needle down, and now I'm going to flip this over to the center block, right sides together, lift the foot, lower it, and keep sewing. Chain piecing will help your quilting go faster, and it will help save money in the long run because you're not going to be wasting so much thread, pulling out thread tails every time you're changing your block. You'll just have this little tiny bit of thread in between each of these blocks, which we will clip apart. And you can either use the little cutter on the side of your sewing machine if you have that, or we have thread cutters in our shop that you can purchase. Okay, I'm going to lay these back out the way that they were going. And now I'm going to add the last block to the row. So we've made a row of 3. Just make sure those raw edges are together. I like to start my blocks when I can in a smooth area. If I started it on this end, it would be a little bit more bumpy going over all of those seams. This has no seams to go over, so it makes it a little smoother to start the stitching, and then the needle will go right over those seams a lot easier with a running start than if it was starting on it. Just double check that you're putting all your blocks going the right directions. You're not accidentally turning something. Otherwise, your block won't turn out correct. And then you'll have a date with Jack the Ripper. Jack the Seam Ripper. Okay, so I'm going to clip apart those connecting threads and take these to the ironing board. Okay, now we want to iron these in different directions so that our seams will nest to get those perfect points in the center. So what I mean is this top row, we're going to iron the seams on the back towards the outside block, which is our 4-patch. So what I mean by that is we want these seams going out towards the 4 patches. So what I'm going to do is iron from the top. I'm going to lift up the 4 patches so that these seams are laying flat on the ironing board with our center block. And then I'm going to lay the iron on the center block and just bump right into those seams, pushing it over towards the 4-patch. And same with this side, just pushing it right over. That way the seam is laying flat against the 4-patch and away from the half square triangle. See how that? The reason why I do it from the front is so that this seam is pushed all the way over and it doesn't accidentally get folded under. It's too easy to accidentally fold your fabric and iron it down when you're just setting the iron down on it or when you're setting it down from the back. That's why I like to iron it from the top. I'm going to do the same thing to the bottom row, pressing that seam over towards the 4 patches on each side. Okay, and then this middle row, we want the seams going towards the 4-patch in the center. So to do that, I'm going to lay this block on the ironing board so that the seam is flat on the ironing board, and just lift these 2 blocks up, set the iron on there, and scoot it over to that seam, just bonking right into it, ironing it down. And then we're going to rotate it. Bonk it right into there and iron it down. Okay, so now both seams should be ironed in towards the center, like so. And these are going out away from the center so that we can nest our seams right here in the middle. When we put these blocks together, the seams are going in opposite directions, which helps that little bump of the seam nest together. They'll just bump right into each other so that you can get those perfect points. Okay, let's go to the sewing machine and sew those together. And there we go. Look at those perfect points. I love it. Now we just need to add the last row on top. So just lay it back out. Make sure that it's going the direction that you want it to before putting them right sides together. And then just nest those first set of seams. Don't worry about getting your raw edges on the outside matched up as much as it's important to get that seam nested in the center. Once you get past that first seam, then you can pause, let your needle be a third hand for you, and just leave your foot down and then readjust this next seam that needs nested before continuing on. And then once you get past that seam, then just double check everything is laid out the way you want it to be. Raw edges are connecting. And there we go. Okay, let's go iron it again. So there's several different ways you could iron this. You could iron all your seams going in or out or open, either way. I kind of like opening them. I mean, it's definitely easier just to push them over to the side, but opening them makes the block lay a lot flatter, which is really nice, especially when you're doing the quilting part. So your needle's not going over a bunch of bulky seams. I'll use my clapper to help seal that in and make it nice and flat. This just takes the heat away from the block, and that way it sets it a lot flatter. So I'll just let that sit there while we do this next seam. And then I like to take it to the top and give it a good press on the top as well. Look at that pretty block. I love it. Some of my favorite colors, if you couldn't tell. All right, last step, and this is important to do. It is important to square your blocks up so that they all measure the same dimensions, so that when you put them together, you won't have any wonky, weird seams. Everything will nest well. And this should be measuring 12.5 inches. And it is just perfect. Yay! So the way you can find your center is, well, this is very easy because you have a 4 patch in the middle. So 6 1/4 should be our center line running all the way through this block. And if the point is right there in the middle, that's perfect. And then you'll trim off any excess around the outside, which I do have a tiny bit of excess on this side right here. There we go. Double check. Yeah, looking really good. Maybe just a tiny extra right there too. And look at that, you made Jacob's ladder. Great job. Hey, thanks so much for joining me today in making this traditional block, Jacob's ladder. I hope that you enjoyed this and that you're going to go make one for yourself. If you'd like more tips, tricks, and tutorials, I invite you to join our society, a membership where you will get a library full of quilting tutorials to help you on your quilting journey. Next week, we start our new series where we're going to make even more of these traditional blocks. I'll see you then.